We're live, pal. The dream team is here. Denise, who I'm introducing first because if you were watching her social media over the weekend, she had a conniption fit after the New York Jets beat the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. Denise, how are you doing?
I honestly did not know where you were going to begin with this because I feel like I had a wild week with social media. I was like, there was all the Halloween stuff, the Scott Steiner promo, then there was
Oh,
like
we'll get
a
there.
bunch of other
there.
stuff, and then the Jets thing, and then yesterday I made people mad over a Christmas tweet. I mean, it's just nonstop, Garrett. I honest to God did not know where you were going to go with this, but glad to be here.
I had many ways to go. That's the whole key. You were creating content over the weekend, my friend.
Definitely hustling right there, man.
All right, and also Andrew Zarian, who is hosting Wrestling Observer Live on Sunday, and who I will get to see in the flesh because I am headed to New York this weekend. Andrew, what is up?
Listen, it's going to be a blast. You're going to be in the studio. Rich is also going to be here. I am the Wrestling Observer Live now. I'm just the Wrestling Observer Live. That's what I want to go by. I'm changing my name. No, man, I'm totally psyched to go on, to do this. It's in, quite a few markets. Like, I think like 250, 300 markets. It's on Sirius, I believe. 37, 38 years old. Pretty cool. I'm enjoying this.
So do you have a different vision from how Brian does the show? Or are you going to kind of do it very similarly to, or is it a surprise and we just have to find out?
It's going to be a slow evolution. I'm going to start it off pretty close to what Brian does. Obviously, Brian and I have very different ways we speak,
Styles,
so it's not going to be the same show. But I'm going to keep it as true as possible. We're working on guests. We're going to have guests in studio. Obviously, I'm going to have my co-hosts. You're going to be on regularly. I want Denise on. I kind of want to make it more of a free flow than a very, this is what we're talking this segment, this is what we're talking that segment, because we have 2 hours to fill.
Yeah.
And it changes the whole game. When you're doing 2 hours compared to one, it's a very different game. So very excited for it. Slowly it's going to change a little bit, but nothing drastic.
Little Wrestling Observer Live trivia from the IATA days, which is where Andrew, I know, heard the show as well. The roles were reversed. Dave was the actual host and Brian was the sidekick. And Dave's open to that show was, "How's it going, everybody?" And so Brian's open today on all of his shows is, "How's it going, everybody?" So he actually took that from Dave's IATA. That was his way to keep the show similar.
And I'm going to continue it. And I'm going to
continue
continue it.
You got to.
So
I think
that's not changing. I'm also going to throw in a lot of IATA stuff. I'm going to throw in a lot of like old school IATA stuff. Maybe some of the music beds. Maybe some of this change. The IATA thing. I know I'm taking up so much time with this, but it really, 16, 17-year-old me, running home to make sure I had a boombox, like, old school 90s boombox that I had connected to my computer. And I had it on a timer to record every episode of the Wrestling Observer. So I had that archive for a long time. I don't know what happened over the years, but it was a major part of me getting into pro wrestling heavily. And the honor of being able to be the third host of it, it definitely does not fall shy of the meaning. It means a lot to me that I'm able to do this.
That's why you're the right person.
And you know what? Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Exactly,
I'm going to have a ball with it, so I'm looking forward.
We've had that conversation before. Okay, let's get to our guest. In the fourth chair, we have a guest for the third week in a row. Great job, Booker person Denise. This person is the host of the Going In Raw podcast. Steve, what is up? And thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Denise. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here. This is the first time I've been involved in a Wrestling Observer show, so this is I'm going to try not to make a fool of myself, but it's sort of the role I play over at Going In Raw. So no promises on that one.
No, you're going to be great. I prepped you a little bit, so we'll get going here. But before we do, I was just kind of wondering, Halloween, like Denise was wearing a different costume for every one of her shows. She was doing promos as Scott Steiner. But Andrew, what is Halloween with the kids like these days? This is the second Halloween trick or treating that we've had to do in the pandemic. Did the kids actually get out there and trick or treat and knock on doors?
Yeah, so I grew up in my neighborhood, like the same neighborhood. I bought my childhood house. So I'm like engraved in this town. Nobody trick or treats anymore, right? It's totally changed. They do trunk or treat, which that's what my kids did at like the parking lot by the school. But everybody now goes down into stores. That was not a thing when we were younger. You never went into like a restaurant, a nail salon to get candy. That's the only change that's so baffling to me, that now you take the kids down like the big strip and you go into businesses rather than going to people's homes.
So, what is the reason for that? Because, I now have stepkids who are of age to trick or treat again, but my kids are so much older. So if there's a gap of like the last 8 years where I had no idea, we got one person coming to our door. So what is the reason for that?
I think because nobody opens the door anymore. I honestly think that's the reason. Nobody's opening the door to like, it depends on the town. Like the town over for me is like crazy with this stuff. Like everybody's out, but over here it's like totally slowed down. I don't think we have a lot of kids left. I don't think they can, people moved out. They couldn't afford staying here. So now if you got kids, you go down, you go into the store. It's also maybe a little bit of a safety thing, right?
Yeah.
You're more inclined.
Sure.
You feel a little bit safer going into, the local, deli to get candy for the kids rather than going to some random person's home.
Now, Denise, were the costumes just for the show, or were you people knocking on your door and you're showing up as Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner giving out candy?
They were definitely just for the show, and I kind of just did it so that it could be fun. But I actually hosted the shows in the costumes too, which was very, very uncomfortable because the Scott Steiner, the chain link thing was actually really heavy. Like I got a legit one, so it was heavy. And then on top of that, yeah, my neck's been hurting. On top of that, the wig was making me scratch. So I was like, every now and then I'd be like scratching my head on the air. I mean, it was terrible. And then when I did the Brandon Cutler costume, like that one was a lot more comfortable. But the face mask was literally pressing on my head. And then I also had a bald cap, and the bald cap was kind of scratching me too. So it was one of those things where I was like, okay, it's more comfortable than the last one. Granted, I got to wear a tracksuit, which was much more comfortable than the muscles. But then I did the Seth Rollins one, and the Seth Rollins one was kind of weird because it's like, okay, I had the mask, right? I have the mask for the Seth Rollins costume, but you can't see my mouth moving on the show. So I only used it for the SmackDown portion of my show. And then I took it off. And when I took off the mask, my nose was red because of the mask. It was pressing down my nose the entire time. And then immediately after that, on the actual Halloween day, I did not wear any costumes at all.
Costumed out, but very creative, my friend. You are a very creative person. The Brandon, all the costumes were great. The Brandon Cutler one caught me by surprise, and then I see it caught him by surprise too, because I saw on Twitter. All right, but there was another costume that I saw over the weekend, very relevant to this show and this network. It was John Morrison dressed as somebody, and if we have the photo, I kind of wanted to show it in its photo. So this is John Morrison. He's got stars, and it's a little hard to see, but he's got this VIP badge with the name of Dave Meltzer on it. And I wanted to get everybody's thoughts on how John did with this costume. And Steve, I want to go with you first. I don't know if you've seen this picture. I imagine you have. But in your mind, is this what a Dave Meltzer Halloween costume is supposed to look like?
I mean, I feel like he's not as jacked as Dave is. I feel like he needs to be a bit more jacked. But otherwise, I mean, he's got the few times that I've been in the same venue, because I've attended a couple PWG shows, a couple other shows where I've noticed Dave there. From what I remember, he's got the yellow notepad, and that doesn't look like the yellow legal pad that I've seen. So I do think that maybe a couple adjustments need to be made, but otherwise, I thought the review aspect of it, I thought that he did a pretty good Meltzer impersonation with the review he had in the caption. I thought I would give him solid 3 3/4 stars for that costume. I thought it was pretty solid.
So, Andrew, you've been a big Meltzer fan before. I don't know if I've ever thought of dressing as Dave for Halloween, and now that I do shows with him and stuff like that, it's kind of I can't do it anymore. But when you're growing up, did you ever think, "Wow, Dave Meltzer costume for Halloween"? That's what I'm going
No, I don't think. I don't think I knew what Dave looked like until like years later because I only would listen. But I think he did a great job with it. I think that obviously, like Steve said, not jacked enough. You need those big Popeye Dave Meltzer arms. It's actually unbelievable when you see him in person how muscular Dave is. Also, the pants. I prefer the acid wash pants that Dave has.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I
If he
agree
went
with
the
you
acid
100%.
wash, I think he would have hit the nail on the head.
So the other thing about and more, I'm not shading Morrison in any way. Great idea. The glasses, like Dave doesn't wear glasses. So here's the
Jesus, look at
famous
those
photo,
arms.
right? This is the famous photo, and this is the tank top that Morrison was going for, right? The gray tank top that Dave likes to wear, probably because it shows off his arms. And so the only thing was the glasses. Now Dave may need actual glasses from time to time, especially as it's like 3:00 in the morning when he's still writing the issue on a Friday morning. But I've never seen him wear glasses before, so that maybe was a little bit off. But other than that, great job, John Morrison, with the costume.
Yeah, the
All right.
glasses threw me off for a second. I actually thought, like, when I first saw the picture and I just saw the top of him, I thought he was Tony Khan. I just saw the glasses and the hair. I didn't actually get the costume. The first thing that I noticed was the stars. Once I saw the
Yes.
stars and then I saw the name tag, like that was what kind of like obviously gave it away. The one thing that I think would have been funny had he gone that extra step, costume expert over here, had he put like a bunch of papers like all over the place and then just set that up as his like photo shoot area, I think that would have taken it like an extra level. But it was good.
Yes.
It was good.
Yes. All right, so we're gonna get into the show, and I have a little bit of a different idea on what I want to do today. I want to play a game with everybody here. And the game is literally called Yes or No. Now, these aren't as creative as the games that Denise has put together for the Twitch channel and all that stuff. Very simple, yes or no. But I think these are some pretty interesting topics about pro wrestling today, WWE, AEW, and I even have an ROH question. And I want to, just ask everybody, and we'll go around the room. I'll even give my 2 cents here. But let's start with last night's Raw. Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch had a great match. And my first question is, and let's start with our guest, with Steve. Should Bianca Belair have won the title last night on Monday Night Raw?
No. And here's why. It needs to be. So this is what I hope happens. And oftentimes on Going in Raw, I'm considered the Charlie Brown with the football, and WWE's the Lucy, because I'd like to think that they have something in mind. I don't want Becky's heel. Right now, Becky's heel turn is in danger of being Stone Cold's heel turn, where it was entertaining enough. There was a lot of cool stuff, but basically people were just waiting for him to go back to being a good guy because he would kick a lot of ass. Becky's heel turn needs to make a bigger, brighter star out of Bianca. Now, probably the best way to do that is for that to be a WrestleMania moment. Have them main event night 1 or night 2 of WrestleMania. Bianca maybe wins the Rumble, and it means a lot more there. I hope that's the plan. I hope there's an actual plan in place for that to be the case. They obviously need to do Becky versus Charlotte at Survivor Series because there was all that buzz about what happened last week or the week before or whatever. And so, no, I think that it does need to be a Bianca story about her getting back to it. Certainly not on a Raw. I mean, look, I like when big things happen on Raw. I think it's awesome when big things happen on Raw. But for it just to happen last night, no, I feel like it that shouldn't be the thing. She needs to have a longer story and a WrestleMania. I mean, if she beat Sasha at WrestleMania last year and then Becky at WrestleMania this coming year, next year, I think that is really establishing a homegrown WWE star that has 2 amazing moments behind her. We all know she can carry the ball. So no, I don't think she should have won it last night.
All right, Denise, last week we talked about this idea of Charlotte and Bianca, and should they have changed the belt on that Raw, and they decided not to. What did you think about last night? Was that the right move that they did, or should they, yes or no, should Bianca have beaten Becky last night?
I agree with Steve. My answer is no. And the reason for that is that the way that they had Becky Lynch essentially defeat Bianca Belair at SummerSlam, I'm sorry, but there needs to be a bigger story. There needs to be more of a build for her to actually win the title back. Because if you kind of, let's say they would have just had her win, last night, it kind of would have been like, really? You did that whole thing at SummerSlam and then this is it? She just wins the title just like that on a random Raw? Like, I'm sorry, like there isn't enough story there. They need to do a lot more to kind of get you more invested. But on top of that, a lot of people were showing frustration last night on our post show when they were talking about the fact that they're tired of seeing Bianca Belair lose. I think they had plenty of opportunities, and one of them obviously was, Saudi Arabia. It wouldn't have made sense for them to actually have her win on that show, but that you can still kind of count that as an opportunity. But really the big one, I think, was that match with Charlotte Flair. Had she won against Charlotte Flair that night, that would have been smart. But it's just things got too all like mixed up. Things weren't making sense anymore. And I feel like that's why they didn't give her the bout. But then it's like, okay, I just feel that they wouldn't have gotten in this predicament had they not even had this match last night. Like this match should not have even happened last night. There should have been a bigger build for this, have it actually occur on a pay-per-view and then maybe have her get her win back. But now it's like, okay, well, Becky Lynch defeated her in the way that she did. Now you got to do something with that because that's the decision they decided to go in. So I agree, no.
All right, Andrew, I'm in agreement with both of them. And the main reason is because of Survivor Series. I think, and I don't know if they're going to take advantage of it, but we talked about this. There was a little bit of momentum with this Becky and Charlotte stuff that happened a couple weeks ago. I do hope that they take advantage of it because that could be a giant match, even though, maybe there's no stipulations or whatever. So, but clean sweep on the nose here for should Bianca have won last night?
Yeah, I think I'm big on the no. I think you need to make it important. I agree with Denise. If you were going to do a title change, I think the Charlotte moment would have been the moment for her. But going into Survivor Series, this makes you kind of go, about that whole story that came out, right? A little bit.
Right.
When I asked about it and I said, hey, can you give me an on the record response? It was, it got people talking, didn't it? Something along those lines. I can't remember exactly, but it was more like everybody's talking about it. That's not a bad thing. Like almost kind of like a wink and a nod in that. So I'm like, you know what? They're going to use this opportunity. If they, WWE tends to do that a lot. We saw them, on a totally extreme level. It was Edge and Matt Hardy years ago when they used that, situation to turn it into a storyline. So I'm very curious to see what they do. I'm anticipating they turn this into a major storyline for Survivor Series and have people buzzing because, people love it when there's some sort of realism mixed in.
And if they do have that match, which we think that they will, that I'm sure they'll work it a little bit more snug to make it look, a little stiff, and that they're not happy with each other, or whatever. And I think that's what's really good about pro wrestling. Take something that exists and make it work on television. I think it's a great idea. All right, well, let's stay on the WWE beat here for a second because I had this thought as I was watching Raw. And I kind of caught SmackDown a little late. And I was wondering, is Monday Night Raw still WWE's A show? And Denise, let's start with you. Do you consider Raw the A show?
All right. So I know this is a yes or no question. So I'm going to say this is a tough one because you're asking me post-draft. I'm going to say no. All right. Okay. I'm going to stick with no just because Fox is Fox. And I still think that there is, just still the second SmackDown went to Fox, that became the A show to me. However, I do think that post-draft, Raw has more of the stars on that brand. So part of me is a little bit torn on this one. My no isn't necessarily as confident as it would have been had you asked me like 2 weeks ago or like whenever, like before the draft took effect, I would have definitely said, no, Raw is not the A show. It's definitely SmackDown. But things have been changing since the draft, and my no is not as confident anymore because Raw does have a little bit more leverage on SmackDown in terms of some of the content that they've been showing, they've been
Sure.
showcasing on the actual show.
I'm glad you answered that way because now I don't know if we're gonna have a full clean sweep here. But Steve, you do a show called Going in Raw. Do you consider Raw to be the A show? Yes or no?
Hard no. And the show is called that because back then when we started it, Raw was the only thing going. SmackDown was firmly the B show. It was basically a recap show. There was no AEW. We didn't cover New Japan. So like it was the only thing going, and you can't rebrand. So we've been stuck with that title. So a lot of people think that we just cover up. That's not true. We cover everything. But no. Raw is that right now, there is no marquee name on Raw besides Becky Lynch. You have a bunch of they have more depth maybe in their top scene than SmackDown does, but SmackDown clearly has the main event scene there of all of WWE. They've got the top champion. They've got Roman Reigns. He's the top guy in the WWE, and their ratings are clearly way better. They're on a much, I don't know about much these days, but they're on Fox. It feels like the A show now. I think that when you have one show where you know the top champion, Roman Reigns, is not going to lose that title until maybe like 2023, and you have another show where their top champion can probably lose that title after Survivor Series. I'm not even sure that Big E's going to leave Survivor Series with his title because Seth Rollins has a contract which they might use like Money in the Bank. And then Edge could come back and take that off Seth Rollins. There's all sorts of people there who Kevin Owens could claim to be, even though he's probably going to be gone, he could claim to be a WWE champion, or he could make that claim for the title at some point in the future. There's any number of people there on Raw who could take the title, which is more akin to when SmackDown was being run by Paul Heyman. He had the SmackDown 6 like 20 years ago. They have a really, really awesome depth to their show. You got Riddle, Orton. I mean, guys in their tag scene who could be singles guys. AJ Styles is still there. They have all the pieces for what could be the A show, but clearly that creative sort of swamp where they have 3 hours and they've got these championship contender matches, which really don't mean a thing. It's not the A show. SmackDown is clearly the better show creatively. It does better in the ratings. It's on a bigger network. They have the bigger star. I don't see in any way, shape, or form how Raw could be considered the A show these days. That could change, but for right now, it's a hard no. SmackDown is the A show.
All right, Andrew, you can close this one down. I have a not a slight different answer, but I'm going to say yes, and here's why. The reason why I started thinking about this is because I was on Friday. Now we have so much stuff to watch with Rampage and then SmackDown, and they were both on cable. And I looked at that cable number, and I'm not saying that SmackDown would do that number every week if it was on cable, FS1, whatever. If it was on USA, I'm looking at just comparison for comparison's sake. And I look at that number, and they did just over 1 million viewers, average viewers. And then you look at Raw, and Raw, even though Raw has been, up and down, a little bit more down, lately, they still do more viewership on cable than that SmackDown show did. And so I was starting to think, why? Like, why would SmackDown not, they have this great Fox audience. And I think, and I'm the furthest thing from a casual fan, right? I'm not a casual fan in any way, but as I watch both of these shows, I don't watch them live. And I started to gauge what is my interest in watching Raw or SmackDown. SmackDown has Roman Reigns. Reigns is great. When Lesnar's on, I'm in. I love Sasha Banks. I love Charlotte. They're all great. But I still find myself being a little bit more interested in seeing what happens on Raw than on SmackDown. And it could simply be because it's at the end of the week and the weekend is here and our week is over and Monday's the beginning of the week for us for wrestling all over again. So I'm going to say yes, but Andrew, interested in your thoughts on this question.
I'm gonna go based on just what's an easier show for me to watch and what do I enjoy more, right? And I'm gonna take my I love pro wrestling, wrestling out of this element. SmackDown is a way easier show to watch. I mean, I used to never watch SmackDown live. I mean, it was even during. I mean, Steve brought up SmackDown 6 during that era. I never I would DVR it and watch it a couple days later because Raw was the A show. Even when it wasn't good, it was still positioned as the A show. Your biggest star that you've created over the last, I want to say 10, 15 years is on SmackDown. I mean, at the end of the day, that's where he is. That's where Brock Lesnar is. That's where you've conditioned people to tune in to watch, the big angle. You also have had months of a really hot story with Edge. You are on a network. You kind of, I know they position both as both A shows. There's no A and B anymore. They're two totally together stuff. But the reality is, I don't know one person in the world. I mean, honestly, from my timeline or talking to people I know, who says Raw is who enjoys Raw more? It's not a thing. It really isn't. And some of that is the third hour. Some of that is the shift that they did a couple months ago or during the pandemic with Paul Heyman kind of elevating the younger guys that didn't work and they pulled the rug under them. There's a lot of moving parts. Raw will eventually become the A show again. I'm certain that we're going to have this conversation a year from now or a year and a half from now, hopefully, and say, you know what, Raw's doing better than SmackDown. They've kind of shifted, but they can't have that idea or that logic of A and B anymore because both these brands, both these networks are paying you for the best product that they could possibly get. Nobody wants to hear that they have a B show. I don't think USA would be happy by the way, USA very, very clearly knows that SmackDown is the better show. Okay? I could tell you without a shadow of a doubt from my conversations over there that they are fully much aware that SmackDown is the show. And there's constant conversations happening as to why, the whole reason why they do one for you and one for you now is because SmackDown USA was getting upset. NBC was getting upset that SmackDown was getting such momentum and they were kind of being pushed to the side. And they also see a lot of the chatter. They read all these stories out there. They're seeing what Twitter's saying. And what is Twitter saying? Steve has a show called, that has Raw in the title, but the reality is SmackDown is the main show. And we all know this. So, on paper, they can't ever say it, but I think we as the viewers know what's a better show.
So I want to see someone draw a cartoon where it's like Roman Reigns in the middle, tied and ropes coming out on both sides, like the SmackDown and the Fox executives pulling him in a tug of war,
pulling him.
or the Raw and the Fox, Raw and SmackDown execs, like they're just like pulling him. And every year SmackDown just wins and keeps him. All right, let's stay slightly on the WWE beat. This is an NXT question because Halloween Havoc, they did their big Halloween Havoc show last week, and we saw what I was hoping to be the culmination of this new star by the name of Braun Breaker to just bulldoze Tommaso Ciampa like Hulk Hogan did against the Iron Sheik back in 1984 to win this title and to create a new babyface superstar. It didn't happen that way. So my question is, and we'll start with, let's start with Denise again, because Denise, I'm putting you as the booker of NXT. You are the person in charge of making these decisions. Just like you book all of our guests on this show, you decide who goes over. If you were that person, would Braun Breaker be the NXT champion today? Yes or no?
All right. So I'm going to say no. And here's why. So I thought Braun Breaker was going to win. I was completely positive that he was going to win this match. I went in there thinking he's going to win, and that's it. I didn't think of it anymore. That was it. It was finalized, especially because one of the topics that I had touched on my show was essentially, certain guys no longer fitting into the brand and just not really fitting the style of NXT 2.0, et cetera, et cetera. However, I may see you asked the question like after I already know, so I've had a change of heart. Had you asked me before this match, I would have said yes. But after this match, I'm changing my answer and saying no. And the reason for that is Tommaso Ciampa literally has one of the problems with NXT 2.0 is that there's not a lot of guys that can necessarily go and work all of these, matches and stuff like that. The work rate has definitely gone down, etc. And that's not to say, anything bad about Braun Breaker, but it's just that Tommaso Ciampa is clearly in another level. And also Tommaso Ciampa happens to be one of my favorite guys. And I knew that the second that Tommaso Ciampa was no longer champion, I'm not so confident that they would actually do anything with him. And additionally, here's why I'm going to stick with no, because the money is in the chase, okay? And Braun Breaker is bound to be champion at some point. They did not have to rush this, and that's why I'm saying no, because I don't think they had to rush it, and they didn't, and they're clearly not rushing it. We know he's going to be champion, but at least they're not going right away to it. Give us a little bit of a story here, more so than the can they coexist stuff.
All right, Steve, I see you shaking your head. In agreement. I want you to go in raw here. Do you believe Braun Breaker should have beat Tommaso Ciampa at NXT's Halloween Havoc?
I am shocked that he didn't. I am so glad that he didn't. No, I don't think he should have beat Tommaso Ciampa. Everything Denise said is totally true. And I actually watched this match twice, and I was shocked that they actually told the story correctly, in that Ciampa was such a strategist, a master. He led this kid around all over the ring, and Breaker did everything Ciampa wanted him to do. He went whenever he was in trouble from one of Breaker's power moves, Ciampa would move outside, boom, DDT on the carpet. He'd go outside, he'd come back in, boom, draping DDT. He schooled this guy in every single way. And that's how it should be. If you're going to introduce all of a sudden these new kids who have been here since February, then there needs to be some sort of continuity between Tommaso Ciampa is this master strategist who's been around forever. Braun Breaker's this new kid who's basically a Scott and Rick Steiner meme. I mean, let's be honest. But in order for him to carry the NXT banner, he's got to be more than that. So I don't know if it's going to be he shows up tonight and says, I don't know who Braun Breaker is. I'm a Steiner, because I thought there were plans for him to be a Steiner in the first place. And he throws down the name metaphorically and he becomes a Steiner. If you really want buzz for NXT, you bring in Scott Steiner to mentor him. That would kill everything. Everybody would be talking about NXT.
And to host Denise's show with her.
Seriously.
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
If they brought in Ted DiBiase, they can bring in Scott Steiner, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Doesn't supposedly he and Vince don't get along or something? I've heard that.
He's on the no-fly list for WWE.
You can't let him in the building or something, right?
You have all that money, you can get it done. Even bring in Rick. Whatever works.
Bring in Rick.
But you have somebody be a mentor to this kid so that he can figure it out. And then if they do a takeover, whatever, coming up in early December, then you pull the trigger on it. It'll give him just a month to figure out this guy, because he was completely outclassed, and maybe that's not realistic, but obviously they see him as the guy. I thought it'd been more interesting for a more seasoned wrestler like Joe Gacy, who actually has tons of kind of really interesting buzz around his character, for him to get the title off Ciampa, because their match was actually a solid wrestling match where he was trading wits with Tommaso Ciampa. It was a relatively short match, but I thought that could have been a bit more interesting than Braun Breaker. But I think, like Denise said, you need a story for this guy. Otherwise, it's just going to be like, oh, they just wanted to rush this change. I'm so glad they didn't. Shocked that they didn't do that. Yeah, I am. But I'm glad they didn't. And no, I don't think they should have done it. I don't think they should have done it.
Andrew, you're going to have to save me here, because I'm gobsmacked at these last two answers.
I
want a baby face who I can believe in, who is young, who is cool. I don't like having the rug pulled from underneath me when I get behind a guy. Andrew, yes or no on Braun Breaker?
I'm going to have to tell you, you're not going to like my answer. First of all, I went into this. I went into that show saying this is his moment. He should win the title. Look like $1 million, demolish him, and say this is my era now. However, I rewatched it. So I watched it, but I was kind of watching it, and I rewatched it the next day. And what Steve said with the psychology that Ciampa was kind of playing him, that he's this ringmaster and this young kid that's, bulldozing through everything. He just doesn't. He has the physique, he has the skill, but he doesn't have the experience. I thought they did a great job at that story. And it kind of changed my thought process on what they should have done. If you had told me, what do you want to do? I would have said he should win it. However, the way that they did it worked. I hope they continue it. By the way, Steve's idea that this guy goes on TV tonight and says, because they're cursing now on NXT, right? They use bad words. Enough of this BS. I'm not Braun Breaker. That's not who I am. I'm a Steiner, Michigan State wrestling champions, tag team champ, world champions. The lineage I come from is not something we should hide. And now I'm going to show you everybody why I'm a Steiner. And he just kills everybody, and he goes nuts. He kills everybody. I'd love to bring Scotty in. I don't know if they would, or Rick in. I don't know if they would, but it kind of changed my philosophy as to what they should have done compared to what I would have done before I saw it. So I'm kind of in the middle. I get why a lot of people wanted him. And I had said this even the next day. I was like, you know what? I think this was a mistake. He should have won the title. But in hindsight now, looking at it and seeing what they did, I think it was the right decision. Because, even in that match, would you say he was ready to be the man in that company?
A lot of times your top, like your guys who you can get behind aren't. But I won't debate what you guys have said. You guys made great arguments. But Andrew, Scott Steiner may come into your studio there and break stuff by you saying that they went to Michigan State. They went to University of Michigan.
They went to University of Michigan. I'm so sorry.
And
University of Michigan.
Michigan State did beat Michigan this weekend in football. So, all right, let's move on to some AEW stuff. Let's move on to AEW. And so, very similar question, but we're talking about Full Gear here, and we'll ask our guest first here. If you are in charge, yes or no, does Hangman Page beat Kenny Omega in the main event of Full Gear?
Yeah. Yes. 100%. Absolutely. Number one, it's going to be the main event. And AEW's really good at setting things up and delivering to send a crowd home happy. His story, I love that part of the promo when he returned for Hangman was, I left at arguably the peak of my career to go witness the birth of my child. And that set his priorities straight. He realized for the first time, I've got confidence in myself. A lot of people make a lot of noise about Mox being a wholesome dad guy. And then on TV, he's, a murder dad. Well, I love that Hangman made that part of his promo. It's so relatable. Even if you don't have kids, you understand the dude. So at Full Gear, absolutely 100%. I think all the sort of bricks for the super elite starting to fall apart. Young Bucks lost their titles. Kenny lost the Mega Championship, the Impact Championship. Wait, no, he still has the Mega Championship. He's going to lose that soon, probably to El Vikingo. And so, yeah, it's all falling apart. And then who's going to be there when Kenny loses that title? Adam Cole Bebe, kick him out, let Kenny rest up his body. He comes back a babyface in 6 months or whenever. So, yeah, Hangman Page, absolutely. And I'm really interested to see what AEW would do with that type of babyface champion. That's going to be really interesting. But yeah, 100,000% Hangman Page wins a Full Gear.
All right, my questions might be a little bit too easy, but Denise, do you agree with Steve?
All right, so this is a tough one. And the only reason I'm saying this is because that Tony Khan leaked picture kind of, for me, took me a little bit out of the, oh yeah, for sure, let's have Hangman win. All right. So I was thinking about this. I was like, all right, so because we saw what was on there. We saw whose name was circled, etc. Do you stick to that, or because the photo leaked, whether if it was accidentally or whatever, do you change it, right? Because now it's out there. I don't know. Okay. But I'm going to have to say yes. And the reason for that is they can't keep like hitting the brakes and then doing this like pause on Hangman Page. Like the man is over. The man has been over. And, obviously, he took time off to go do, the father stuff and all of that. So, good for him and everything. But I wanted to see, like, when at All Out, that's when I wanted to see Hangman Page win the title. That's when it felt like that's where it should have been. This was the match that I thought was going to happen then. So I was kind of I was one of those people that was disappointed when I found out it wasn't going to be Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page, and thus seeing Hangman Page win there. But obviously, that ended up working out, whatever. So because I don't think they can continue pushing the brakes and then like hitting the gas pedal and then pushing the brakes on him, I'm going to say they might as well do it now before the moment passes and before people are kind of like, oh, they're teasing this again and then it's not going to happen. So I'm going to say yes.
It's a great point. The thing that's what I think about is I could see Omega retaining, but then where does Hangman go because of what they've done? So I that's a great point. The other thing is Tony Khan doesn't have some like organizational software on his computer where he can make the matches. Like he's still using the notebook. Like what's going on? Like it's just I'm at a football game. Okay.
No, I actually defend Tony Khan on this one because I do not do anything like any planning whatsoever on digital. I do everything. Same. I have to write it down or else it just does not happen. It won't get done.
Okay, that's a great point. But it's like, when I go to my real job, I don't carry around a booklet with like topics for We're Live, pal, like just right in front of everybody. Like that's just not,
man.
That's
not
all
my
game.
I do with this right
all
here.
my Twitch ideas right here.
It's just chock full of stuff right here. It's all sorts
Thank
of
you, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah, I got your back, dude.
I'm completely kidding. It was actually pretty,
oh, there we go.
It was actually pretty great to know that he was thinking that while he was at the game. But okay, Andrew, clean this up for us. I'm sure you're going to agree with what everyone has said. You could finish up this topic.
No, I think he should lose.
Wow.
I think he should lose. I think Kenny should retain because here's how I see this, right? Mox Danielson, right?
Yep.
Okay, so Hangman wins. Let's say Danielson. I don't know this to be true. So I'm gonna assume Danielson wins. That match is that rematch with Kenny. It's not with Hangman, and you don't want that for Hangman yet, right? You don't want him and Danielson to be in a match for the next pay-per-view or whatever they're going to do, because the reality is people are going to want to see Bryan Danielson win the title, beat him, and what does that do to Hangman's run, right? So I don't know. I this kind of threw
Danielson might not
Bryan
let
Danielson
them put the belt on himself. He's like so against winning titles and stuff. That'd be interesting.
I don't know, but he's on the verge.
Mox is going to win that match. Mox is totally going to win the finals of that thing.
Mox
Murder Dad versus Wholesome Dad. Oh man, that's the match.
I mean, you turn him heel, right? I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, if you go that way and you have a heel Mox and a Hangman, I think those two are going to, just beat the crap out of each other. It's going to be fantastic. But I think this is a good problem to have when we're not arguing, but we don't know what direction they should go with because they have so many great options. And that's something that we rarely get to do when it comes to wrestling because it's a once, WWE has had this, 2016 to 2018, they were on fire. even 2014 to 2018, that company was doing tremendous stuff. We saw guys like Nakamura show up and AJ Styles, and they could have put that title on so many people and it would have been the right decision. I think their AEW right now is in that position because they've showcased so many people, and that's the path they've been on, right? We don't really have deep diving storylines for AEW yet. They're in the showcasing portion of their run, and rightfully so because you got to get all these people on TV and introduce them before you start building the stories. Listen, I would say Kenny retains with some bizarreness. I know people are not going to be happy with that, but Kenny retains somehow, and the next match is set up for Danielson and Kenny, if you go in that way. If not, then I don't know how badly I want to see a heel Moxley and a Hangman right now. I kind of want to see Hangman, develop into this great baby face and not give him an opponent that you might boo him to.
Great thoughts on that. I didn't think that you were going that way, but I'm glad that you did. By the way, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but we did this interview with Moxley over the weekend, and he said Bryan Danielson's the greatest wrestler of all time. Did anybody what did you guys think about that? I thought that was it came out of left field for me. I mean, I know that he likes Bryan Danielson a lot. Bryan Danielson is in his book. He actually mentions having conversation with Bryan Danielson, but I didn't see that one coming. I thought he was going to say, Mox is kind of old school, but nope. He said Bryan Danielson's the greatest wrestler of all time.
That should have been a topic. You should have asked who was a better wrestler, Kenny Omega or Bryan Danielson, because I always feel like that's a topic that you can definitely get some different answers to that. But I don't disagree with that. I think Bryan Danielson is like a wrestling god, so I do not disagree with that.
You could put him in any era, and he succeeds at the top. Any era. I mean, he checks every single box. I mean, maybe not the giant jack dude in the early 80s era, but
yeah. Hogan's not putting him over, brother.
It doesn't work for me, brother. That is a good point. But yeah, I think he's everybody's favorite, or he's a lot of people's favorites in any era. Yeah,
he's awesome.
I think he's top.
Fantastic. All right, we got 2 more questions. Let's see if we can slide these through, and then also we got to do our performer of the week. Maybe we'll go a little bit more quickly on this one. We don't have to get Lance and Brian on this question, but my question to you, and let's start with you, Andrew, was AEW's main event segment on Dynamite too silly for mainstream professional wrestling?
The Ghostbusters stuff?
Yes.
No, I don't. It was a Halloween show. I mean, if they did this like regularly, I would say, yeah, you're kind of taking the element of these like bad dastardly heels out of it. But I thought it was fine. It was a Halloween show, and I personally had no problem with it.
Denise.
Yes, just kidding. No. No, like Andrew said, it's a Halloween episode. I think people just what were you going to expect? Come on, like that stuff happens all the time when it's like holidays and all of that. You know, how many times haven't we seen food fights, on Thanksgiving, Santa Clauses and all of that nonsense? It's Halloween. Come on, let's have some fun. I didn't mind it whatsoever. Was it, am I going to even remember this match probably by the end of this month? Probably not. I probably already have forgotten about it. If people weren't talking about it, I probably would have forgotten already. But to be honest, it was something fun. No harm was done, in my opinion.
All right, Steve, it's up to you.
The reveal of Hangman as a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was an awesome, awesome moment. I loved it. I continually am surprised at people who seem to hate fun, like in their wrestling. I get on Twitter, I'm like, how are people upset that Adam Cole clearly is having the time of his life with his best friends in a featured spot on a huge cable network? Like, it's night and day. I'm like, get him out of NXT and into this spot where he loves being. I loved it. It's awesome. It totally belongs in pro wrestling. And you hate fun if you didn't like this.
All right. I'm not on the I don't even want to say, I don't want to put words into Lance's mouth, but there were elements of this match that I thought, this is fun and this is cute. And there were elements of this match where, and here's my litmus test. I'll tell you what my litmus test is. If my dad walked into the room, would he shake his head in disappointment at what was on the television?
That's a good litmus test.
When they did the thing with the proton packs on the back and they used it to squash the guy in the middle and then powerbomb him onto the proton packs, a little too silly for me, as much as I agree with Steve that this stuff should be fun. And then, the only other thing is I was thinking of, like, we're talking about this great story of Adam Page, and they're going to have this, road to Full Gear, the preview to Full Gear. And part of this video package of telling this great story of Adam Page is going to be him coming out of a costume. And I did think about that, going like, okay, how do you show that in a serious way? You really can't. But I'm not as 100% against it as some people have been. There were stuff that I thought was kind of cute and kind of fun. But there's also stuff where I was like, oh, this is a little bit too much for the main event segment on your next main event match on your next pay-per-view.
But I think
Okay.
to add to that, the whole like having your family member walk in or whatever, there's been way more embarrassing stuff that have happened in wrestling where I'm like, God, please don't let anybody walk in. I don't want any of my friends to know I'm seeing this right now. This is just gonna like
100%.
ruin everything for me.
What
So
a
I feel like-
hand was
Yeah.
birthed on live TV. So
There you go.
Look,
there you go.
Look, you know, I agree, and someone will say, "Well, they do that in WWE all the time," and my thing would be, well, my expectations are just a little bit higher when we're watching some of this stuff than what I would compare to random casual, you know, kiss my ass club WWE. All right, last question.
I want Tony Khan to bring that back.
The kiss my ass club.
Yeah, unhinged Tony. That's what I call him now, because that's apparently on the internet. You read it; he's all unhinged now, right? He's he's going nuts. I want.
It sounds
him
like
to
he
debut
pulled
that
back.
unhinged.
I think he maybe even started pulling back on the WWE attacks because he was so unhinged. It was
I love it.
that was a fun. That's a fun Tony Khan though.
Yeah.
All right, last question, and then we'll get to our performers of the week. Okay, ROH. There's a story that came out. ROH. They're not keeping anybody under contract. They're going to go dark. The ROH 2.0 is going to be probably more of an indie level show than it has been in quite some time. So my question to you is, if Sinclair says all of our IP is for sale and you are AEW, do you buy the tape library as well as the IP and keep the ROH name alive? And let's start with Steve, our guest here.
Ooh, yes, clearly to the first one. Is this a two-part question? Am I allowed to say yes and then no? Because yeah, you absolutely get the tape library.
I think the tape library is a given for either of the companies, right? Especially
Yeah,
AEW's wants to get more video. But would you utilize the brand as well? Would you bring there is some brand awareness in professional wrestling with that ROH name. There's not, it's been less and less, I would say, these days, but there is some brand awareness. Would you try and keep that alive in some way, shape, or form?
I don't see a reason to, so no. I honestly don't. I mean, we've seen, obviously it's a different company, et cetera, but like we saw when WWE tried to keep ECW alive, and I know it's got its fans and everything, but it couldn't have been the same. ECW was never, I don't think ECW was ever meant to be a long-term prospect anyways, but like it would just be Ring of Honor booked AEW style because the people in charge are AEW people and they do very different things. So
you don't want to see a Brian Danielson led ROH reinvention with CM Punk and Danielson as Team ROH. No.
If they have so many people, which I mean they do, they have a lot of great talent there. And I mean, could they? Sure. Should they? No. Because I'm always of the opinion you look forward. I think that AEW has a great dash of the past to their mix, but they're also very forward looking. So no, you just let it rest in peace. I'm gonna say no to that one. You get the tape library. You just maybe you do this. Maybe you do this. The IP exists for the same way WWE was successful as ECW, the first two one night stands. Maybe AEW does Ring of Honor one night stand or whatever the equivalent would be. You do that once a year where, you get your Punks and your Danielsons and you get the mat-based stuff. Maybe you bring in some Forbidden Door guys like Zack Sabre Jr., who wouldn't want to see him in some sort of Ring of Honor type situation. You do that, but as a regular sub-brand, no, there's no need for it.
All right, Denise, are you as into the death of ROH as Steve is here?
Oh, that's so unfair to Steve.
Bloodthirsty like me,
Ring of Honor. Look, I was okay. So when this whole news came about, I thought about it. I was like, what if AEW were to make it a third brand, or I don't know, a special or something like that, right? But okay, so the library question, yes, totally yes, 150,000% yes. In terms of everything else, when Steve was talking about this, and I started thinking, like, well, what do they do as special? You know, I know they're gonna have their 4 special years, there's 4 specials a year, something like that. If they were to do a special, you know, AEW's Ring of Honor, I don't know, just that, and then I don't know, like they could, I guess, do whatever they think would fit the image of that. That would be okay. I wouldn't mind that at all. But I think I have to agree with Steve here. Like, what is the actual use of this, you know? Because the thing is, with Ring of Honor dying, what this means is a bunch of people are out of a job, right? So if AEW were to just do this one show, this still doesn't mean that all these people are going to be back with all these, you know, jobs. No, that's not. That's just going to be like a one show thing. And they already have, like, you know, I just feel like AEW can come up with their own stuff like they have been, you know, Dark Elevation, Rampage, all of that good stuff. So I would say they don't necessarily need it, but the library, yes.
All right, Andrew, we'll let you finish. The only reason I created this question, by the way, is because of the idea of the Forbidden Door. And if you can get the IP and the tape library, and maybe you don't have to spend a ton for it, you can book your own version of whatever the Forbidden Door is. Not saying that they should or shouldn't, but that was where the thought came from. But Andrew, shut us down with this one.
I would say, you know, the take the IP and take the tape library. You also have to remember, you know, WWE controls majority anything that's available to purchase. They've already purchased it, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's been a you know, they pretty much control all of wrestling. And if you're Tony Khan and if you're Warner Media, wouldn't you want to encourage AEW to kind of own this, because it adds more assets to your property, and it also makes the value of your brand, your company, much higher when you have assets. When you don't have much, you just have a wrestling company and you're doing live TV for 2 years, you really don't have much of a back library. Now this could create something. You know, and here's the other thing, right? Would Tony want, and I know he wasn't really hands-on with All In, but that was the beginning of AEW, essentially, right?
He was there, right? Wasn't he there, like in the front row or something? Yeah.
Yeah, he was there, and all those guys were involved. Do they want WWE owning that?
No.
Probably not. And I don't think anybody really wants, you know, the Ring of Honor. I had heard, I mean, year 2016, I somebody mentioned that Sinclair is always listening. If there's an offer, they'll always listen. And this was back in 2016. I was told this. And every time I ask, that's always been the narrative. I've been told that, listen, there's no offer, you know, there's nothing serious on the table, but they're always listening. So, listen, it hasn't turned a profit for them. It cost them a lot of money. The pandemic was very expensive because they actually, out of all the companies out there, they did it I mean, they used tremendous precaution with how they created TV. You know, I don't think Sinclair really cares about the property as much as we would imagine. We would hope that they would. And really, if you let go of your talent, then now you're going to become an indie show. It's going to become very hard to write consistent TV. You're essentially a glorified Evolve with television if you're just getting new guys, you know, unsigned guys on the TV and nobody's on a contract. I think the best thing for AEW would be to reach out and almost convince Sinclair to sell it to them, so it doesn't end up. And I'm not saying that this is what I would do or my suggestion. I'm saying if I'm AEW, this is how I'm going to think. I want to hold assets too. I want to be considered a valuable brand. Yep. I want to now be competitive as far as retelling of pro wrestling history. And what better way to do that is by owning the rights to Ring of Honor, which, you know, and this could go into something next week. I know we're running out of time, but Ring of Honor in 2022, how much does it matter compared to, you know, pre-pandemic? You already have NXT. Impact is somehow surviving. I mean, there could be a nuclear explosion tomorrow. Impact Wrestling is on the air live on you know, on Thursday. You know, you have all these other places that exist on top of NXT, and you have Dark Elevation and Dark, which are for up and coming guys that you don't see on TV. You know, does Ring of Honor have a place, especially without the New Japan connection? And unfortunately, I don't think they would be able to. I hope I'm wrong. I really am. I hope I'm wrong and they recover and they become bigger than ever. But the likelihood of that happening, coming out of a, you know, a long hiatus, not so much.
Yeah, 100% agree. All right, quickly, like Andrew said, we're running out of time. Let's quickly go with our performers of the week. And Steve, we'll let our guest go first. I prepped you for this. You didn't want
Yes.
anyone to steal yours. We will make sure
Yes.
nobody steals yours. You can go first.
Anytime this guy has a match during the week, is probably the best match of the week. Bryan Danielson is my performer of the week. Do you guys see his chest after his match with Eddie Kingston? Oh boy, that was brutal. Yeah.
All right, Denise.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to go with somebody. You know what? I'm going to go. See, I had different options here, but I'm going to go with Serena Deeb. And the reason for that is, obviously her match with
Great pick.
Hikaru Shida. It was a great match. And, a lot of people were obviously talking about it and it got buzz and it was a good performance. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to Serena Deeb.
All right, Andrew.
I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to give it to Sammy and Ethan Page. I'm going to give it to both of them.
Yeah.
It was a great showcase of the next generation of talent that AEW has. And I'm a big Ethan Page fan. I've seen him live a billion times with Evolve. I saw him murder, I saw him take the most craziest spots on the, with his opponents. And he really would try hard in front of like 300 people. This guy is tremendous. He's really put in the work, and I would say both Sammy and Ethan Page did a tremendous job at kind of highlighting themselves as, listen, we're here. We're the next group of guys that are going to be main eventing shows.
All right, I'm going to go with Eddie Kingston. If you go on Wednesday and you have his interview segment on Wednesday, then you have his match with Bryan Danielson on Friday, and then the interview with CM Punk on Friday where he goes a little crazy. I thought this was a tremendous week for Eddie Kingston. I loved that match, and I just thought he was a stellar performer this whole week. So we're gonna end it here. I want to thank Steve, but Steve, before we go, plugs. Let people know where they can find you.
So Going In Raw is at youtube.com/Steven Larson. I'm on the Twitter at MFSteve here. And our joint Twitter account is at Real Going In Raw. So that's pretty much, and it's wherever podcasts can be found as well. And we're live on Twitch for all of our recaps at twitch.tv/Steven Larson.
Awesome. All right. So for Denise and Andrew, make sure you check out Andrew's on Wrestling Observer Live this Sunday, his debut show. Denise, I would assume your
The show
schedule is
Speaking Up Pro
normal.
Wrestling. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays. You guys know the drill. I'll be on here later tonight.
Awesome. All right. So for Steve, for Denise, for Andrew, I'm Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.